Do you know any stories? He asked the reeds all of a sudden. Mira laughed. Oh, a few. A few, her brother admitted. Hodor, said Hodor, humming. You could tell one, said Bran, while we walked. Hodor likes stories about knights. I do too. There are no knights in the neck, said Jojen. Above the water, his sister corrected. The bogs are full of dead ones, though. That's true, said Jojen. Andals and Iron Men, Freys and other fools. All those proud warriors who set out to conquer Greywater, not one of them could find it. They ride into the neck, but not back out. And sooner or later they blunder into the bogs and sink beneath the weight of all that steel and drown there in their armor. The thought of drowned knights under the water gave Bran the shivers. He didn't object, though. He liked the shivers. There was one night, said Mira, in the year of the false spring, the night of the laughing tree, they called him. He might have been a Crannogman, that one. Or not. Jojen's face was dappled with green shadows. Prince Bran has heard that tale 100 times, I'm sure. No, said Bran, I haven't. And if I have, it doesn't matter. Sometimes old Nan would tell the same story she'd told before, but we never minded if it was a good story. Old stories are like old friends, she used to say. You have to visit them from time to time. That's true. Mira walked with her shield on her back, pushing an occasional branch out of the way with her frog spear, just when Bran began to think she wasn't going to tell the story after all. She began. Once there was a curious lad who lived in the neck, who was small like all Crannogmen, but brave and smart and strong as well. He grew up hunting and fishing and climbing trees, and learning all the magics of my people. Bran was almost certain he had never heard this story. Did he have green dreams like Jojen? No, said Mira, but he could breathe mud and run on leaves, and change earth to water and water to earth with no more than a whispered word. He could talk to trees and weave words and make castles appear and disappear. I wish I could, Bran said plaintively. When does he meet the Tree Knight? Mira made a face at him. Sooner if a certain prince would be quiet. I was just asking. The lad knew the magics of the Crannogs, she continued, but he wanted more. Our people seldom travel far from home, you know. We are small folk, and our ways seem queer to some, so the big people do not always treat us kindly. But this lad was bolder than most, and one day, when he had grown to manhood, he decided he would leave the Crannogs and visit the Isle of Faces. No one visits the Isle of Faces, objected Bran. That's where the green men live. It was the green men he meant to find. So he donned a shirt sewn with bronze scales like mine, took up a leathern shield and a 3-pronged spear, like mine, and paddled a little skin boat down the Green Fork. Bran closed his eyes to try and see the man in his little skin boat. In his head, the Crannogman looked like Jojen, only older and stronger, and dressed like Mira. He passed beneath the twins by night so the Freys would not attack him, and when he reached the Trident, he climbed from the river and put his boat on his head, and began to walk. It took him many a day, but finally he reached the God's Eye, threw his boat in the lake, and paddled out to the Isle of Faces. Did he meet the green men? Yes, but that's another story, and not for me to tell. My prince asked for knights. Green men are good too. They are, she agreed, but said no more about them. All that winter the Crannogman stayed on the isle, but when the spring broke he heard the wide world calling, and knew the time had come to leave. His skin boat was just where he'd left it, so he said his farewells and paddled off toward shore. He rowed, and finally saw the distant towers of a castle rising beside the lake. The towers reached even higher as he neared shore, until he realized this must be the greatest castle in all the world. Harrenhal! Bran knew at once. It was Harrenhal! Mira smiled. Was it? Beneath its walls he saw tents of many colors, bright banners cracking in the wind, and knights in mail and plate on barded horses. He smelled roasting meats and heard the sound of laughter. and the blare of heralds' trumpets. A great tourney was about to commence, and champions from all over the land had come to contest it. The king himself was there, with his son, the Dragon Prince. The White Swords had come, to welcome a new brother to their ranks. The Storm Lord was on hand, and the Rose Lord as well. The great Lion of the Rock had quarreled with the king, and stayed away, but many of his bannermen and knights had tended all the same. The Crannogman had never seen such pageantry, and knew he might never see the like again. Part of him wanted nothing so much as to be a part of it. Bran knew that feeling well enough. When he'd been little, all he had ever dreamed was of being a knight. But that had been before he fell and lost his legs. The daughter of the great castle reigned as Queen of Love and Beauty when the tourney opened. 5 champions had sworn to defend her crown, her 4 brothers of Harrenhal, and her famous uncle, a white knight of the Kingsguard. Was she a fair maid? She was, Mira said, hopping over a stone. But there were others fairer still. One was the wife of the Dragon Prince, who'd brought a dozen lady companions to attend her. The knights all begged them for favors to tie about their lances. "This isn't going to be one of those love stories, is it?" Bran asked suspiciously. "Hodor doesn't like those so much." "Hodor," said Hodor agreeably. "He likes the stories where the knights fight monsters." "Sometimes the knights are the monsters, Bran." The little Crannogman was walking across the field, enjoying the warm spring day, and harming none, when he was set upon by 3 squires. They were none older than 15. Yet even so, they were bigger than him, all 3. This was their world as they saw it, and he had no right to be there. They snatched away his spear and knocked him to the ground, cursing him for a frog-eater. Were they Walders? They sounded like something little Walder Frey might have done. None offered a name, but he marked their faces well so he could revenge himself upon them later. They shoved him down every time he tried to rise, and kicked him when he curled up on the ground. But then they heard a roar. "That's my father's man you're kicking," howled the she-wolf. "A wolf on 4 legs or 2? 2, said Mira. The she-wolf laid into the squires with a tawny sword, scattering them all. The Crannogman was bruised and bloody, so she took him back to her lair to clean his cuts and bind them up with linen. There he met her pack brothers, the wild wolf who led them, the quiet wolf beside him, and the pup who was the youngest of the 4. That evening there was to be a feast in Harrenhal, to mark the opening of the tourney, and the she-wolf insisted that the lad attend. He was of high birth, with as much right to a place on the bench as any other man. She was not easy to refuse, this wolf maid, so he let the young pup find him garb suitable to a king's feast, and went up to the great castle. Under Harren's roof he ate and drank with the wolves, and many of their sworn swords besides, Barrowden men, and moose, and bears, and mermen. The Dragon Prince sang a song so sad it made the wolf maid sniffle, but when her pup brother teased her for crying, she poured wine over his head. A black brother spoke, asking for the knights to join the Night's Watch. The Stormlord drank down the night of skulls and kisses, and a wine cup wore. The Crannogman saw a maid with laughing purple eyes dance with the white sword, a red snake, and the Lord of Griffins, and lastly with the quiet wolf, but only after the wild wolf spoke to her on behalf of her brother, too shy to leave his bench. Amidst all this merriment, the little Crannogman spied the 3 squires who had attacked him. One served a pitchfork knight, one a porcupine, while the last attended a knight with 2 towers on his surcoat. A sigil all Crannogmen know well. "The phrase," said Bran, "the phrase of the crossing." "Then as now," she agreed. The wolf maid saw them too, and pointed them out to her brothers. "I could find you a horse, and some armor that might fit," the pup offered. The Crannogman thanked him, but gave no answer. His heart was torn. Crannogmen are smaller than most, but just as proud. The lad was no knight, no more than any of his people. "We sit a boat more often than a horse, and our hands are made for oars, not lances. Much as he wished to have his vengeance, he feared he would only make a fool of himself and shame his people. The quiet wolf had offered the little crannogman a place in his tent that night. But before he slept, he knelt on the lake shore, looking across the water to where the Isle of Faces would be, and said a prayer to the old gods of the north and Neck. "You never heard the story from your father?" asked Jojen. "It was old Nan who told the stories. Mira, go on. You can't stop there." Hodor must have felt the same. "Hodor," he said. And then, "Hodor, Hodor, Hodor, Hodor." "Well," said Mira, "if you would hear the rest." "Yes, tell it." 5 days of jousting were planned, she said. There was a great 7-sided melee as well, and archery and axe throwing, a horse race and tourneys of singers. "Never mind all that." Bran squirmed impatiently in his basket on Hodor's back. "Tell about the jousting." "As my prince commands." The daughter of the castle was the Queen of Love and Beauty, with 4 brothers and an uncle to defend her. But all 4 sons of Harrenhal were defeated on the first day. Their conquerors reigned briefly as champions until they were vanquished in turn. As it happened, the end of the first day saw the Porcupine Knight win a place among the champions, and on the morning of the second day, the Pitchfork Knight and the Knight of the Two Towers were victorious as well. But late on the afternoon of that second day, as the shadows grew long, a Mystery Knight appeared in the lists. Bran nodded sagely. Mystery Knights would often appear at tourneys, with helms concealing their faces and shields that were blank or bore some strange device. Sometimes they were famous champions in disguise. The Dragon Knight once won a tourney as the Knight of Tears, so he could name his sister the Queen of Love and Beauty in the place of the King's mistress. And Barristan the Bold twice donned a Mystery Knight's armor, first time when he was only 10. "It was a little crannogman, I bet." "No one knew," said Mira, "but the Mystery Knight was short of stature and clad in ill-fitting armor, made up of bits and pieces. The device upon his shield was a heart tree of the old gods, a white weirwood with a laughing red face." "Maybe he came from the Isle of Faces," said Bran. "Was he green?" In old Nan's stories, the Guardians had dark green skin and leaves instead of hair. Sometimes they had antlers too, but Bran didn't see how the Mystery Knight could have worn a helm if he had antlers. "I bet the old gods sent him." Perhaps they did. The Mystery Knight dipped his lance before the king, and rode to the end of the list, where the 5 champions had their pavilions. "You know the 3 he challenged. The Porcupine Knight, the Pitchfork Knight, and the Knight of Twin Towers." Bran had heard enough stories to know that. "He was a little crannogman, I told you." Whoever he was, the old gods gave strength to his arm. The Porcupine Knight fell first, and then the Pitchfork Knight, and lastly the Knight of Two Towers. None were well loved, so the common folk cheered lustily for the Knight of the Laughing Tree, as the new champion was soon called. When his fallen foes sought to ransom horse and armor, the Knight of the Laughing Tree spoke in a booming voice through his helm, saying, "Teach your squires honor. That shall be ransom enough." Once the defeated knights chastised their squires sharply, their horses and armor were returned, and so the little crannogman's prayer was answered, by the green men, or the old gods, or the children of the forest, who can say? It was a good story, Bran decided after thinking about it a moment or two. Then what happened? Did the Knight of the Laughing Tree win the tourney and marry a princess? "No," said Mira. That night at the Great Castle, the Storm Lord and the Knight of Skulls and Kisses each swore they would unmask him, and the king himself urged men to challenge him, declaring that the face behind that helm was no friend of his. But the next morning, when the heralds blew their trumpets, and the king took his seat, only 2 champions appeared. The Knight of the Laughing Tree had vanished. The king was wroth, and even sent his son the Dragon Prince to seek the man. But all they ever found was his painted shield, hanging abandoned in a tree. It was the Dragon Prince who won the tourney in the end. Oh. Bran thought about the tale a while. That was a good story. But it should have been the 3 bad knights who hurt him, not their squires. Then the little crannogman could have killed them all. The part about the ransoms was stupid, and the mystery knight should have won the tourney, defeating every challenger, and named the wolf maid the Queen of Love and Beauty. She was, said Mira, but that's a sadder story. Are you certain you never heard this tale before, Bran? Asked Jojen. Your lord father never told it to you. Bran shook his head. The day was growing old by then, and long shadows were creeping down the mountainsides to send black fingers through the pines. If the little crannogman could visit the Owl of Faces, maybe I could too. All the tales agree that the green men had strange magic powers. Maybe they could help him walk again, even turn him into a knight. They turned the little crannogman into a knight. Even if it was only for a day, he thought. A day would be enough.